Since it's the day before Valentine's Day, I figured it would be fitting to discuss the process of seduction. Today's video is a synopsis of Robert Greene's Art of Seduction. We will examine not only seductive characters that are commonly embodied, but strategies and pitfalls in the process as well. Most people are disappointed by not making their desires manifest. Ideal lovers reflect these fantasies. They are an artist creating the fantasy you require. In a world surrounded by the broken dreams and the mundane, there is great power in the ideal lover. Focus intensely on the other person, what they are disappointed by. People reveal this through the tone of voice, through gesture. By seeming to fit what they lack, you will match their ideal. This takes great attention to detail. However, most people are wrapped up in their own desires, so if you are attentive to what they desire, this is to your advantage. We have an ideal of what we would like to become, as well as what other people can be for us. If we've had a comfortable life, we seek someone who will bring danger to our lives. Our ideal is what we feel is missing inside ourselves. Attuned to what is missing inside of you, ideal lovers spark the passion buried by the frustrations of life. They play with power, but under the facade of higher spiritual ideals. Men often idolize the Madonna, a woman who combines the sensual with the spiritual. Courtesans of the Renaissance were able to distinguish themselves from just being prostitutes by having reputations of poets and philosophers. Their homes would be decorated with art, and they would attend Mass. For men, it was ideal to be with a woman who was sensual, but possessed the intellect of an artist. They made sex as if it were in the Garden of Eden. The courtesans had immense power over men by combining physical and spiritual lures. Ideals can also be seductive outside of the romantic context as well. Talleyrand, the right-hand man of Napoleon, was powerful because he understood Napoleon's desire to become emperor, even so far as to hold a mirror in front of him to see that possibility. Kennedy, one of my favorite presidents, had the ideal of Camelot. This was mostly projected after his death. However, his youth and looks were a selling point in his lifetime. Kennedy would appeal to the adventurous spirit of Americans during the space race, giving the American people a common purpose to rally around since World War II. By recalling past imagery and ideals that have been abandoned to the past, a politician can seduce their constituents. Symbolism is all that's necessary, regardless of if there is any reality behind it. The emotions they bring out are enough to bring out a response. The danger of this style of seduction is that if your target sees that the ideal you project is not authentic to who you are, the spell will lose its magic. Most of us feel trapped by the hand we are dealt in life. We are attracted to those who create their own persona, especially if it's more ambiguous and fluid. Dandies are exciting because they cannot be easily categorized. They appeal to our narcissism. To a woman, they have femininity. To a man, a hint at the masculine. The power of the dandy stirs repressed desires. The female dandy, a guy adopting the feminine. Seduction was and always will be a form of feminine power. A man using this form of power is reversing the game, using a feminine strategy on her, without losing the masculine edge. He is certainly heterosexual, but his body and psychology oscillates between the masculine and the feminine. This creates a mirror of the feminine psychology, displaying attention to style, sensitivity, slight aloofness, but a touch of masculine cruelty. By showing a feminine charm, this leaves them vulnerable to a bold, masculine move. The male dandy, a woman adopting the masculine. Nietzsche was in Rome when a fellow philosopher introduced him to Lou von Salome. She had the same ideas as Nietzsche, and of course, this made him infatuated with her. He would compliment her, but she wouldn't reciprocate. Of course, this only made him more obsessive. She visited him in Germany, and they would go for long walks and spend all night discussing philosophy. He asked her to marry him. Her response was that he was going against his own ideals of the Superman by being so conventional. She had no intention of marrying him and left him. Salome was known throughout Europe as the woman who broke Nietzsche's heart. As a cure for his heartbreak, he wrote one of the greatest works, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I guess us philosophy nerds can thank Salome for giving us such a masterpiece. Salome had a mix of feminine and masculine qualities, a gracious and flirtatious manner, but also a sense of independence and analytical mind. Her masculinity made a relationship seem homosexual, which was very taboo at the time. Men don't know how to resist women who use their own strategy against them. Although still passionate and sexual, the male dandy prioritizes her independence and life purpose. As far as appearance goes, the dandy effect can be achieved with style and clothing. David Bowie did this with makeup, Andy Warhol with silver wigs, Oscar Wilde's green suits, and a certain yoga instructor in his rainbow pants. However, it is mostly through attitude that dandy works their magic. They are impudent, live for pleasure, and truly don't give a damn what anyone thinks. A danger with the dandy type is that your ambiguity and free spirit can stir insecurity, particularly from your own gender. However, the solution is to accept that you're a bit of a misfit, than to prove something that you're not. Be pleasantly different and amusing, not just a contrarian dickhead. The degree to which you can delay satisfaction is the degree to which you can effectively seduce. Coquettes are masters of this, alternating between desire and frustration. Their aloofness only makes you pursue them more. Napoleon had some impressive feats in his career. However, he wasn't so strategic in his love life. He would meet a lady named Josephine. She would sometimes ignore him, and this would really piss him off. However, over time, they would spend more and more time together and eventually marry. On the battlefield, she was all that he could think about, spending hours writing letters, which you could imagine was of concern to those around him. She would half-ass her letters, not writing with passion, and she wouldn't meet up with him in Italy, eventually making a cuck out of him for another man. Well, at least if you ever get cheated on, you can use the fact that it happened to Napoleon too as a cope. The chase gave Napoleon a masochistic pleasure. His goal was to conquer Josephine like he would conquer on the battlefield. In terms of artistry, Andy Warhol embodied the coquette archetype to market his work. When asked what the meaning or inspiration of his work was, he would reply with, "Because I like it," or "I like soup." When asked to speak at schools, he had a friend wear sunglasses and a disguise to look like him. Because this pseudo-Warhol knew nothing about art, he would give vague answers, just like Warhol himself. His strategy was to make your presence known in a subtle, weird way when everyone else is aggressive. Coquettes are relentless teases. Their success may seem odd because they're so distant, but it only makes the heat that much more valuable. Self-sufficiency is seductive. Neediness repels. Talking about yourself endlessly isn't seductive either, but repellent. Coquettes are never jealous, but instead create jealousy in their targets to win their favor. The danger in coquettishness is you're playing with people's emotions. Valerie Solons wrote a play for Andy Warhol in the hopes that it would become a film, making her famous. When she realized that he was toying with her, she shot him 3 times, nearly killing him.
We could have been a good couple. We could have had something special. You one crazy ass bitch.
Charmers deflect attention from themselves and put it on their target instead. They appeal to vanity and self-esteem. Sex can be disruptive. Charmers take aspects of it, but without the sex, attention, wooing, boost in self-esteem and understanding. Charmers listen and observe. Listen to your target's complaints and frustrations. This allows you to learn more about them and effectively distract them with pleasure. A lighthearted presence is more seductive. Diplomacy is also charming, allowing people to have their little victories. Charmers are aware of our egocentric tendencies, and they appeal to them. They don't talk about themselves, but instead show interest in us. Examples of charmers include Bill Clinton, Henry Kissinger, and Benjamin Disraeli. The danger of being a charmer is that not everyone will fall for their charms, particularly cynics or people that are overconfident. However, if numbers are on your side, this works in your favor. Charisma is seduction of the masses. This could come from qualities that make them stand out from others, such as boldness. Most religions were founded by a charismatic, someone who is favored by the gods. Today we are more secular. Anyone who has a similar effect when they walk into a room is said to be a charismatic. In our rational, reductionist society, people crave someone with a mystical look in their eyes. Krishnamurti was chosen by the Theosophical Society to be a world teacher. They even formed the Order of the Star in the East, intended to prepare the way for the coming world teacher. A decade later, he started to have visions, and he realized that the divine truth came from within, without any need for a guru or teacher. In fact, the reverence that people had for him disgusted him. He was no god or messiah, just another man. To the shock of his followers, he abandoned the Order of the Star in the East and the Theosophical Society. People would claw for his attention, trying to touch him when the car windows were open. When hearing him speak, Aldous Huxley described him as, quote, "It was like listening to the discourse of the Buddha. Such power, such intrinsic authority." Krishnamurti would describe himself in the third person, and people found his detachment even more seductive. Women fell in love with him, even though he was a committed celibate. People don't wish to spend years reading books or practicing methods to reach enlightenment. They want to be in the presence of your aura, hoping it will rub off on them. This is the Gura effect. Someone discovers a truth that makes them content with life, that they have all the answers. People are drawn to someone who emits happiness. So I guess that explains why people will spend thousands of dollars to see Tony Robbins jump up and down for hours. It's essential we notice anti-seductive qualities not only in others but ourselves. All anti-seductive qualities come from one thing: insecurity. We may have a few of these qualities, but they can be rooted out over time with awareness, the brew. Seduction is a ceremonial process that requires patience. Brutes want to skip the whole journey and get straight to the climax. Make them wait a bit and see if they have any patience or not. The suffocator. Suffocators are all in love with you before you even know that they exist. This comes from an extreme neediness. Moralizer. Seduction is playful. Anything goes. Moralizers are rigid. They try to make you a better person. They love to criticize and mold you to their standards, and usually have a physical stiffness. Tightwad. Tightwads are stringy, ungenerous, which is not seductive. It's good to have a generous view of your resources and yourself. However, too generous and you could be seen as trying to buy someone. Bumblers, not to be confused with the dating app, are self-conscious to the point of being awkward. This heightens the self-consciousness in who they're trying to seduce as well. If they do manage to get to the later stages of seduction, they manage to bumble all over that as well. Windbag, someone who won't shut the fuck up. Reactors, as the name suggests, are easily reactive to any slight to their vanity. They whine and complain. If they react to a minor joke at their expense, they are likely a reactor. We should be able to laugh at ourselves. This is why self-deprecating humor can be so seductive. Dissolve any reactive qualities in your character. They repel people. The vulgarian. The vulgarian is inattentive to detail, style, and is in bad taste. They lack self-control and delay of the impulses. Will blab anything in public. Lack discretion. Make use of the opposite with tact, style, and attention to detail. The seduction should not begin too quickly. This creates resistance. Greene gives an example of Duke Lazoun gradually seducing Grand Mademoiselle. They would bump into each other and have longer and longer conversations over time. Even though the Duke had a reputation for being a player, she found him charming. Eventually, it was revealed that she wanted to marry him. This tact was effective because through indirection, he was able to convince her as if she was doing the seducing. How do you make your target come to you? You create space. Be the periphery at their existence, letting them notice you at places, but not approaching them, gradually moving closer while maintaining friendship of the opposite sex. Do not flood them with attention. Some space is good. This gives them room for attention. The opposite sex is a foreign land. For both sexes, it can be a source of fear and insecurity. A sense of danger can be useful in the later stage of seduction, But earlier on, it's better to calm these doubts. Casanova had some feminine qualities, interest in clothes and theater, that women found comforting. Using others is also a great way to approach if you're trying to seduce someone before you make a move. This gives you information about your target for approaching them and having a conversation. If you say things to this person that knows them, they're also likely to repeat it, fortunately and unfortunately. The reversal of this is if you want to impress your target immediately, such as the case of Casanova or Cleopatra. However, this is more useful for higher quality seduction. A gradual, more indirect approach is for this quality seduction. And this isn't in the book, but just for some of my 2 cents, a potential trap is that if you're too indirect for too long, it won't transition to romance. We do not live in Victorian England or the courtship of the past. So make use of being direct and indirect when appropriate. So I'll leave it for you to decide what's useful in the circumstance. For a bit of homework, I recommend Leo Gura's Implicit versus Explicit Communication as another resource, which I will provide in the description. If only the physical aspects of seduction are used, it will lose its spark. An emphasis on the divine and spiritual will make you sublime in their eyes. A combination of the spiritual and sexual will take cock-teasing to the next level. Spirituality has the pull of making us see something larger than ourselves. Using imagery of religion or the occult can have seductive effects by making them pay attention to something beautiful, like nature, a work of art. How is religion seductive? I thought religion is all about rules and dogma, dietary restrictions, what I can wear, and limits on sexuality and all that crap. That's not very sexy. Well, Greene argues that religion is actually the most seductive system man has ever created because it gives an explanation for what happens when we die and our purpose in life. We aren't just apes slinging shit at each other, but creatures made in the image of a supreme being. We are uneasy with our animal desires. It is best to create a foundation in a long-lasting seduction. Seduction is a mental process, and nothing more seductive than using spirituality and the occult. Rasputin would receive visits from women for spiritual healing and the presence of his saintliness. After a few minutes of discussing lofty spiritual ideas, he would make a remark about how beautiful she was, her lips, the desire she could inspire in a man. He would describe platonic love, divine love, and love between a man and a woman. He would go back to discussing spiritual matters, and then when he would hold her hand and whisper in her ears. This would create a mix of sexual and spiritual excitement. Hundreds of women succumbed during these spiritual visits, for he would also tell them that they could not repent until they had sinned, and who better to sin with than Rasputin? However, the spiritual doesn't necessarily have to be religious or metaphysical, so long as it's sublime. Culture and art have taken the place of religion in today's society. Picasso would immortalize women in his paintings. The reversal is that if this is projected into the future, this can cause an anxiety in who you're trying to seduce, or cause someone to cling to you if you don't want it. The spiritual experience should be in the moment. The more one pleases generally, the less one pleases profoundly. Being too nice isn't sexy. Start with focused attention and then change direction. This gives you the upper hand, leaving them insecure. The lower the lows, the lower the highs. The excitement of fear heightens the erotic exchange. Greene gives the example of a story of a guy in love with a factory worker. They meet up and she kisses him. And then gets pissed and says that he's only using her for a good time. Confused, he thinks to himself, what the fuck? She came on to me. He simps, showering her and her mother with gifts, and eventually buys her a house. He sees her flirting with other men. Frustrated, he confronts her. She starts to cry and makes him kiss her feet. He complies. She tells him this is good. You can leave now. And a guy comes from the bushes. Too stunned to move, Don Mateo watched them.
Fucked on the bed, fucked on the floor.
The next morning, she came to see if he blew his brains out. To her shock, he was still alive. He told her the torment that she put him through, and he bitch-smacked her across the face. She looks at him lovingly, and it's revealed that she only made a cuck out of him for show, and that somehow she was still a virgin. By making him suffer, Conchita makes him more infatuated with her.
That slut I love.
Psychologically speaking, we appreciate something more if we suffer in the pursuit of it. Quote, "The ride on which you take your victims can be torturous but never dull. At all costs, keep your targets emotional and on edge. Create enough highs and lows, and you will wear away the last vestiges of their willpower." If you see signs of this, don't be a fucking simp, just move on. We were taught, for the most part, to be people pleasers, to never hurt anybody's feelings, to be politically correct. However, this is not seductive. The outcome is predictable. There needs to be a tension for there to be a release. For the reversal, Greene writes that inflicting pain on people who are recently wounded is not effective, but instead to comfort them, to entrap them. Being too aggressive and used to you makes your target give less of their own energy. When they are under your spell, create the illusion that the seducer is being seduced. In the 1840s, Suffocator was a famous model captured in sculpture and painting. She received a series of anonymous letters adoring her. Eventually, she was haunted by him. She wondered who wrote these mysterious letters. She had a hunch that it was Charles Baudelaire, a young poet who frequented her salon. He was shy, but he would give her this look, as if he were in love. However, she didn't want to confront him. The letters stopped. Years went by, and eventually she received a copy of a book of his poems, where he confirmed that it was him. She invites him to her apartment, tries kissing him, but he remains cold and does not reciprocate. She tries everything to possess him, letters, promises of all kinds, till he writes to her that he's no longer in love with her. And all I have to say is,
what the fuck happened?
a target with an active mind can see through manipulations. To obscure this, a sexual presence through voice, gestures, and looks will raise the temperature. The physical is not forced, but instead used to turn up the heat and lure your targets. Rationality and all else fade away as your target succumbs. Ernest Jurgens was known for finding unusual acts to promote in the entertainment world. One day while in France, he encountered Caroline Otero, a Spanish dancer. After her performance was over, he went backstage to introduce himself. Being the opportunist, her eyes lit up as he spoke of his job in New York. Although Jurgens was a family man, they went out that night, and he took her to his hotel room. She began to undress, and, quote, "The normally timid Jurgens went on the attack." Jurgens gave her a lucrative contract, which wasn't a sure thing because she was an amateur dancer. However, she became a success, and this turned into an all-out simp Olympics with millionaires courting her with jewelry and evenings on yachts. To rival the other millionaires for Otero's attention, Jurgen dipped into the business to buy her jewelry. This embezzling became public, and he was one of the first of many simps to commit suicide driven by Otero. In World War I, a soldier named Frederick won $37K in a crap game. He recognized Otero at a hotel, and I think you have a pretty good idea of what happened with most of that $37K. He bought her a $31,000 necklace. It's around $500,000 today. Imagine if she had an Instagram or OnlyFans. Errol Flynn will get the attention of whom he was trying to seduce, surrounding them with water. Everything else would fade away, and he would take the center stage. Appearance is also of importance, but it's mostly about gesture, your style, voice, closeness, a combination of features. The reversal of this is that many people feel repelled by their physical body, so a spiritual lure may be more effective. The person has interest in you but hasn't declared it yet. Now is the time to go on the offensive and for the truth to reveal itself. Appearing overly eager, all about sex, will make you seem like you don't appreciate the other charming qualities of your target. Wait too long, and it will appear that you are unwilling to act upon your desires. Once you see certain gestures, a look in their eyes, nervousness, or awkwardness in your presence, etc., go in for the offensive. Seduction has a different set of rules than that of our everyday lives. In our everyday lives, we do our best to appear humble, fair, and moral. With seduction, it can be enticing to embrace your dark side and hold a space for the repressed desires in others. Boldness is erotic, and necessary for the conclusion of the seduction. As a young man, Errol Flynn was excessively bold, which got him into trouble. While traveling in the East, he immersed himself in tantric practices. In tantric practice, you enjoy the process as opposed to rushing to the climax. He applied delaying the inevitable to seduction as well. Uncontrolled boldness is not seductive. It helps to know when to use it and when not to. There is an element of uncertainty, but it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. Awareness of circumstances will help you see signs that they're falling for you. This concludes today's video. Figured since it was close to Valentine's Day, it would be fitting to have all these lovey-dovey topics for the month. It's useful to think of this topic in terms of behavior, and that there's a lot of power in your mindset to be more attractive. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. Do we need more new strategies to connect with people in the social media landscape? Or is human nature pretty consistent no matter what generation you're in? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Make sure to hit subscribe. And you can also sign up for our newsletter as well on our website at www.focusshiftmedia.net to stay updated with our videos every week.